holds training seminars regionally. I just actually got back from one in Indiana. We're part of a 7-state region. And a lot of chaplains throughout the country can't afford to travel to the annual event, which is a week-long, very intensive training program, both for the basic chaplains, and we have some very advanced training for those that have been around a while. So back in 1999, we held that big one here in Columbus. The City of Dublin and the Dublin Police Department were actually the host of that event. That's what caused my hair to go gray. And it was a phenomenal event, a great experience. The chaplains from Central Ohio, and we'll talk here there on the bottom bullet, the funds raised, the profit that we raised, which wasn't much, but it was a little bit, from the annual training seminar was seed money to start the Central Ohio Law Enforcement Chaplaincy Team. The same as on the international level, chaplains within Central Ohio knew one another, but we didn't have a real tight network. We didn't train together. So the money that we raised from that event started COLLECT, or the Central Ohio Law Enforcement Chaplaincy Team, and we have been able to intensify our efforts here in Central Ohio with especially with different suburban agencies to get chaplains implanted within those areas right here in Central Ohio. When we started, we developed this as kind of our regional look as far as which counties we consider Central Ohio. And we serve, support, and train law enforcement officers within Central Ohio. Basically the same mission as the international organization is what we went with. We were founded here in Central Ohio in '99. We subscribe to the same principles and values as the ICPC. Without the ICPC, without that international organization, we wouldn't exist. Same as this club, I'm sure without the Rotary International wouldn't exist. So we subscribe to everything the ICPC stands for, and we try to expand organizationally intensely here in Central Ohio, but really throughout the state. We again do the same thing the ICPC does in providing chaplaincy services to agencies who need one. We provide training to police officers. The big one that we have done is the suicide prevention training program for police officers. Every 17 hours in the United States, a police officer takes his or her own life. Every 58 hours, one dies in the line of duty. So our suicide rate is much higher than our line of duty rate. To me, that's a very troubling statistic. We take this suicide prevention into a lot of places here in Central Ohio, a lot of smaller agencies especially, who don't think that this kind of thing can happen. And we have to relate to them some of the experiences we've had right here in Central Ohio with police officers committing suicide from very small agencies here in the greater Columbus area. So that we see that as one of our very important callings. We also work very closely with the Fraternal Order of Police to support critical incident stress management services within the state of Ohio. I think everybody on our chaplaincy team has a place somewhere on one of the CISM teams, which is again very important. And like I said, we assist agencies in starting their own programs. When the police chaplaincy concept first started in Dublin, I have to admit some of my coworkers looked at me cross-eyed, which they still do, but trying to figure out what does a police chaplain do. There's a lot of misconceptions about police chaplains are going to come in at roll call and have a Bible study. They're going to be up there at the podium and lecture you and give you a sermon. And while those are certainly important things, the police department is not the time or the place to do that. The ministry of presence is huge. When we go to a police officer who's lost somebody in the line of duty, when we go and a police officer is just having a really bad time, most of what we do is just be there. This was evident very much in New York. The amount of talking that we did was very minimal. Just being there and listening to what they had to say was huge. We counsel law enforcement officers and their families. We counsel with members of the police department. especially dispatchers, because when you call 911 and you're screaming for help, either be law enforcement or fire, that person sitting in that office very rarely gets the rest of the story. They find out what you need, they send the services to you, and then that's it. And that's very troubling for somebody that's in radio if they don't know the rest of the story. How did that end up? So they face a lot of stresses right there in the radio room. We spend a significant amount of time with families of law enforcement officers. It's very well documented in the career of a law enforcement officer, certain, sometimes negative personality things are going to happen at certain stages in their career. Law enforcement is a very demanding career. And so we try to work with families to let them know of the changes that they can expect in the personality and the character of their loved one who just entered law enforcement. Of course, we visit police officers who are either injured or have family members in the hospital. And one of that last bullet point there is we make death notifications. That's actually in a very backwards way how the chaplaincy program got started here in the city of Dublin. In 1989, myself and Officer Randy Laux, who was one of my very dear friends, we had to go and tell someone that their daughter had just committed suicide. And, the police officers put up this wall so nothing emotionally can get into us, and we didn't know how to do it. And we really probably did a very disservice to this family, because all we wanted to do was go knock on the door, your daughter's committed suicide, and leave, because we didn't want those emotions to get into us. And as walking away, Randy Laux, as only Randy Laux could say, basically said, there's got to be a better way. We shouldn't have to do this. We felt bad. I know the family felt bad, and we probably didn't add anything to their healing process. So now when we have to do that, we have a chaplain go along with us. The chaplains are trained in comforting individuals in grief. So that, while it's not something obviously that we look forward to still, that relieves some of our stress, and we also help the family along their healing path right away.